I got snacks in the corner.
Necessary.
Okay.
And give you food.
Well, here I'll sit next to you. Sure. On it.
Your coffee.
You look like the president.
I think I better go over there. I'm too far away.
Lawrence Peters, were you with us when the MU zoning was first put into place?
Yes, sir. Okay, meeting is being live streamed, everybody.
I read an article. Or three. This guy right here. And he said, I've transformed abandoned buildings into iconic city centers and constructed the first ever workforce housing building in Charleston and wrote the zoning ordinance for it.
Who said that?
Mr. Cox. Did he write the zoning?
No, man. We're live. Everyone.
Sorry about that. I just got a fact check something, y'all.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Okay, we'll get started in just a minute.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Me.
Morning, everybody. We're going to get started. This is our October FloodStat meeting. We're going to have a very exciting presentation from housing and a quick update from Tracy and I in innovation. And as we all know, the goals of FloodStat are to increase the city's resilience to flooding, sea level rise, and storm surge. And the broader mission of Priority Stat is also to foster an environment of accountability and collaboration through an established framework for measuring performance on the mayor's highest priorities. And thank you everyone for kind of a record turnout. So really appreciate you all being here. And for those on the live stream, we do have coffee downstairs. So come on by. So just a quick reminder, the FloodStat key performance indicators are focused on no preventable loss of life or injuries during a flood event, reducing risk of damage caused by flooding and sea level rise, minimizing disruption to businesses and city services due to flooding and sea level rise, reducing city government generated carbon emissions, and reducing the flood risk of the city through community activism. And as we are all very well aware, we are in the midst of flooding and hurricane season. So compared to last meeting, we've had quite a bit more hours above 7 feet flood. So just make sure you all are being careful and staying off flooded roads and checking your tie-dye app before going places. But here's sort of the most recent updates from August. So this is a little bit past its prime, but this is the most recent data we have at the moment. And now we're going to talk about a few things that are sort of exciting updates from innovation. Tracy's going to walk us through the performance hub.
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. And I want to reiterate for those that are attending online, not only is there coffee, but there's snacks here too. So you're really missing out, especially if you're in the building.
And healthy snacks.
And there's some healthy snacks too, and some not so healthy snacks as well. So trying to please everyone. But anywho, we had a cancellation. Somebody couldn't present today. So we are taking advantage of that opportunity while we have you all hostage to share with you some updates in the innovation office. This summer we had an intern. Thank you, Dale, for your help with making all that happen, and the mayor, of course. It was a great addition to our big staff for 8 weeks over the summer. And so Sarah worked with us to really put an idea that Shannon and I had come up with, this performance hub. And so what is this performance hub? It's basically a one-stop shop, or will be. It's actually launched, but there's still some work to do, but basically it's a one-stop shop for how to see how we are tracking on all the things that we're doing and measuring. So it covers some basic performance management. So we highlight some of the work in TRC because they have some goals that they've established as a committee. And so we have a dashboard that shows that. I think there's some more opportunities for some just internal performance management that we'll be launching over the next couple of months. One of those, I think, was it Operation Move Out, things like that have some measures associated with them, but also just, for departments, if you've got things that you are tracking regularly and want to have that available on the Performance Hub for citizens to see, definitely hit us up. We're happy to add you to the hub. And then, so that's one kind. We broke it up into 4 different sections. The second piece is kind of plan progress. So not just city plans, right? So that's part of it. But how are we progressing on some of those other things? The climate action plan, there's a lot of goals and measures associated with that. So we've got, some dashboards and links to charts and things like that on the progress for that, and a lot of other plans, including the city plan. We have our own innovation strategy. So we talk about kind of how we're progressing on the goals that Shannon and I have put together for innovation. And then of course, priority stat. So all of that will also be, did I hear somebody? Maybe I'm just hearing things. Old age. So, and then priority stat, obviously we've got, here today for FloodStat. So as we start to really develop and get everybody's goals and measures, get them solidified and get everybody regularly reporting on those, all of that's there. Will be. And then the last piece, the last bucket we have on there is vendor performance. So working with different departments that manage contracts, especially those that do have performance indicators as part of them, to be able to show how our vendors are performing. So anyway, please check it out. There's a link to it from the innovation, the public homepage. So .charleston-sc.gov. So please check that out and give us your feedback. We would love to hear from y'all. What do you like about it? What do you not like? How can we improve it? What do we need to add, modify? So would really value that input from y'all. Any questions or comments about the Performance Hub or something that, immediate reaction?
I think it's.
We just launched it. It's brand new. Just brand new.
I think it's great. I just wrote a note to talk to you
And if there's
about the
anything,
grant and tracking things for that.
Yeah, that's great.
That'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
fantastic.
It helps us too, with our 2 vendors that do our solid waste collection and stuff. And I think Matt sent you an email yesterday. We're trying to, we can get a little bit more solid information on some of the misses and stuff. So we'll be a little more accurate. I think it's a big help.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You guys are like #1 on my list to launch next on the vendor performance piece. So I think that's a really interesting thing that citizens will appreciate, being able to see how those garbage and trash contractors are performing. So thanks, Tom. All right, well, check it out. Let us know what you think.
But I think the sort of the last thing we'll cover from innovation is looking forward to 2024. We're going to kind of shift some of our FloodStat structuring for the presentations, try to make them a little more more similar to sort of the housing stat model of collaborative presentations between departments. We're hoping that this will, just based on feedback we've been getting and also the success of housing stat in terms of engaging different departments and sort of showing that as a city, we're working on these shared challenges together. So we're going to sort of switch the structure from department to department to by KPI. So in February, we'll probably take that session as sort of an all departments workshop to sort of figure out exactly what people's concerns are or what they're excited about, kind of structure the following year. And then April through December, those meetings will be sort of devoted to the individual KPI. So it'll be kind of a nice chance for us to take sort of, make it more collaborative, make it a little more engaging, and also just sort of further increase the communication on sort of our shared goals. Anything else on that, Tracy?
No, I think, you know, the work that everybody's doing on both FloodStat and housing stat, I feel like we're really starting to get some traction and people are really starting to, you know, really develop measurable goals with everybody, and it's pretty exciting. So appreciate everyone, you know, working together and some of the things that are really coming out of this program so far. Hopefully you all are finding this a little beneficial as well.
Yeah. And thank you for letting us all kind of like poke and prod you and try to, it's been, I know everyone's been incredibly receptive and kind as we sort of restructured. So just wanted to appreciate everyone's help. Yep. And without further ado, we'll jump over to housing.
And I do want to thank the housing folks because they did present last time at Housing Stat too. So they have really been role models here for the Priority Stat program. So thanks, guys.
Well, good morning, everyone. And today we're just gonna be short and sweet. We're gonna talk about what we're doing in terms of mitigating flooding as we do for the acquisition of land and also building new construction. So Eddie's gonna present. I'm Florence Peters. I'm the Housing Development Officer, and I'll be the second presenter. So today I think we're looking at 100% of newly constructed affordable housing will not have a flooding vulnerability score of less than 50, which is not high risk. And we're also going to be looking at the decrease the number of preserved, repaired, rehabilitated affordable housing vulnerable to the SLR and flooding by 10% annually. I think those are the goals that we have set. And Eddie will go ahead and present on his.
Can I say one little thing here? I hope I'm not stealing your thunder at all, Eddie, but I do want to give a little shout out to the GIS team. So if we look at, if you go back to that first, you know, we talk about, you know, how do we score this? You know, that vulnerability study that we did a number of years ago, Robert and his team put together some information in GIS that makes that information really easy to find in MapNet for everyone. If you don't know about it, we probably need to give Robert the floor at some point to kind of review with everybody what data is in MapNet and how to access it, because there's really a lot of information in there to really help everybody get a lot of information about vulnerability. So sorry.
And we do use that, and they've been very instrumental in helping us to get to where we are right now. We didn't do this by ourselves. We really had a lot of help from him, and he was very instrumental in especially mapping the areas and just helping us to, you know, to get to this point.
Well, good morning, everyone. It is really good to be here. Such a beautiful day. I'm going to focus on what we do for folks who live in their own homes and who are not as familiar with the processes that we have to deal with. But first of all, what I have before you is a chart here that you can follow with me on it. And with this chart includes the address of the properties, the neighborhood where these properties are located, flood zone information, and the age of the homes. What we have here is 11 houses that, and we use the data from January 23 to now, through September. What we have here is we have 6 families or homes where they have a 0.2% chance of having flood hazards. And that's good information to know that we can share with them as they progress through the project. But what we do is then we have 3 houses where the home is located in what we would call a zone X, meaning that you're not in a flood zone. At least that's where we computed. And then we have 6 homes that actually we have 6 that fall in the AE flood zone level, and which means that their minimum hazard possible through the time that they're in this particular house homes. Now, we feel, in looking at this very carefully and thinking about the people that live in these homes, most of these are seniors, folks, is it's a good thing, because that means that when we go to talk to them, we talk about insurance, they are adamant saying, well, it doesn't flood over here, you know, all these years. But the data proves it to be online, in that when you look at the percentage of where they fall, it makes sense. That 1%, we have only 3 projects that fall at 1%. Have the possibilities. So that means that with all of these homes here, these folks have been right all this time, but we didn't have any data. We didn't have any way to track to prove that. So I think that going forward, that will have, I think, a positive impact on when we're talking to other people who needs work done to their homes, and that when we explain that to them. Now, what we do also, before we do any work at all to the houses, we have to get approval from HUD. This is new, because we were not, you know, we submit the application to them to review what we plan to do to the home, and they will respond back whether or not it is appropriate for us to proceed with the project. If they say no, then we'll have to make some adjustments until we can figure out a way to get the project done. And generally what that means is that they are in a, that we would have to do more work to the home to make sure that it can combat what any type of flood issues that we may have. So we see this as a good help for us in terms of marketing and recruiting and giving confidence to the property owners that they're okay. They're going to be okay, and the statistics prove that. So if you have any questions, I will be glad to entertain them. But the more I look at this sheet of paper here, the more enthusiastic I become, because there's no reason for us to really fear anything, because of the fact that you can see what their risk level is, and that's good. in my opinion. So,
So the one that jumps out to me is that 38 Amherst.
mhm.
Since it's, kind of, I'm just kind of curious, I'm kind of curious about that one. Maybe we shouldn't talk about properties specifically, but looking at the age of that one, I'm just kind of curious, from a rehabilitation perspective, what do we,
well, what we were looking at there is,
because I would think that one's pretty vulnerable just based on the age of it and location, right?
well, when they came and wanted to do a roof replacement. That's what they were looking for.
Yeah.
And what we do with all of these, we have to do, we do that, we do risk assessment tests, and that's mandatory. And where we need to, we do a structural engineering report to find out what was the structural damage beyond what the homeowner sees. And we haven't found anything there yet, so. But sometimes you're blessed. That plays a role in this too, that there comes a time when there are things that we can't explain. But that's where we are right now. They're looking at basically get the roof done, and they mentioned a few other things interior wise that need to be done.
Okay. I think maybe you guys are going to touch on this. So, but I think what a great thing that at least I've witnessed over, as we've really recognized the importance of protecting these houses and making sure that we're not putting vulnerable people in harm's way, right? I feel like you guys do so much more, number one, work with other departments when you guys are researching and looking at these projects to actually for the city to invest in. I don't know if you want to share some details on how that's, because I think it's just evolved over, over the last so many years, which I think is a really great story of kind of all this, everybody really working together to make sure that we're protecting our citizens as best we can.
Well, from a preservation point of view, I mean, I'm not on the rehab side, but what has happened over the years in doing preservation and with these older houses that are vulnerable to flooding, we partnered with different organizations. We have the Charleston Historic Foundation, and then there's the sustainability. They're one of our partners. So, and I think Eddie can address some of the other partners that we have. But the idea with all of that is to make sure sometimes the house needs to be raised, we can't afford to do it. Sometimes a house needs, to be basically partially demolished and then rebuilt. Just so they can get insurance, when it's finished. There's a lot that go into it, but everything the city can't do. So when we find ourselves in a place where this is what we are able to do based on the funding that we're using, then we have partners that come in to make the whole thing affordable and also preservable so that the person could have a proper house that is then have all the flooding mitigation taken care of. But it takes all the partners, because as a city, while we have the vision and we know how it can be done, we can't do it all by ourselves.
Let me add to that. Taking a step further, we work very closely with the Historic Charleston Foundation, and they have a program that they have launched, and we will, when we see a project that needs more than we can do by ourselves, we partner together, and they will go out and look at it and make a determination of whether or not this is one that they can do. They work in conjunction with the Charleston Redevelopment Corporation. Their partnerships in this, and also we have a partnership with Sustainability Institute. They our energy proficient. And they're just very good in that area and taking it. And they can be called on. We're working with them. And so we start Charleston Foundation right now. And sometimes we'll even bring in some of the nonprofits like Operation Home or Paramount Cap, just name a few. But we have launched, I mean, we have a solid partnership with these groups that can help us, because we realize we can't do it all by ourselves. We just can't. We don't have the resources. But when we look at the combination of a project that really would take a magnitude, take a pile of money, so to speak,
Yeah,
and make it work, we have the ability to call on these groups to help us. And vice versa, they'll call us when they jump into a project and it's more than they can handle. So the collaboration and partnership is critical. It's not important, it is critical.
Yeah, it ultimately keeps people in their homes and their
Right.
community where they may have to move away and they don't.
which we know is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
I think we just,
I have a comment. So my job is to be the skunk in the room. I wanna just add this here. So the flood insurance rate maps, firms that it's just at 1.2%, 0.2% flood risk. That's done to set flood insurance rate, not, it's a proxy, it's not an actual model, it's a proxy to indicate flood risk. So it's not optimal. FEMA has updated their processes in something called risk rating 2.0 to get better information. So you may want to see what these individual homes are getting in relation to their flood insurance rates, because that may give you a better sense of how FEMA thinks their risk has evolved from the original assessments to now. So that's good. The firms, flood insurance rate maps are generally very good to very good at indicating coastal flood risk. So coming from tides and storm surge, they're notoriously not good at dealing with rainfall flood risk. And so you can see some of these areas that the two in Rosemont, that can drain off a little bit if the tide isn't so high, but on the east side, that's a challenge because that's a bowl over there. So we should consider what that means in the future. And the reason I say this is what's happened in nationwide across the last decade. Is that when you're having rain bombs or coastal storms, what you are seeing is 30 to 50% of the damaged homes are not in these zones. So they're above the shaded X or the 1 in 500 year or the 0.2 area. So the flood risk is evolving. Hurricane Harvey, 40% of the damaged homes were not in the floodplain. So this is changing. Again, we're getting better with data, but we need to think about, okay, how do we take this new environment and make sure that what you all are doing for these homes and what we're doing for new developments reflect that future risk. So that's really important for us to keep evolving this. So we're developing this comprehensive water plan, and we have mapped, they're not modeled, but we've mapped the future flood risk and how the floodplains are changing for coastal rainfall and compound. And that next year when that's out, we think you all should consider what that means for the future. That's good. And just one of the things that you're seeing again with this change in the last decade is the 1 in 100 year rainfall amounts are quickly becoming the 1 in 20 year. And the 1 in 10 year rainfall amount is the 2 year rainfall amount. And the 500 is the 100. So you see the tremendous sort of increase in risk. So we need to keep that in mind too, because we want, the folks in city housing and elsewhere to understand these risks and to make sure we're doing the appropriate things for them so they can stay safe and that their cars can stay safe in the way that they, live their lives, make sure that whole thing is appropriate.
Well, isn't one of the most important thing we can do regarding this is to make sure that they get insurance and they keep insurance, flood insurance.
Exactly.
Because that's the only thing that really only protection that they're gonna have.
So,
I mean, the reality is now, is that what we are dealing with now, with climate change and all of that stuff, the only way you're gonna protect these elderly people out there that own their own little home, their little castle, is if that they, in addition to being assisted by the city, where we can, that we make sure and encourage them to get flood insurance. That is their protection. I understand what you're saying, but I'm looking at how this impacts them and their lives going forward.
So the biggest thing any individual can do to manage their own personal risk or their family risk is flood insurance, no doubt about that.
No doubt.
However, flood insurance is expensive and getting more expensive, right? The risk rating 2.0, these new premiums are reflecting increased risk. So, in a lot of areas, some houses have been taken out of the risk zones because they have better modeling and mapping. And the ones that are in, some portion of those are actually seeing a tremendous increase in their premium for flood insurance because the risk now is better understood. We may want to ponder what the city can do to help those individuals or those families in those structures, in those homes, purchase flood insurance. And then there's other things that the city and others can be doing with grants, with philanthropy, with others to flood-proof their home, protect their home, understand that. One of the dangers, one of the longer-term dangers with flood insurance, having this, it's wonderful to have, but once you've had a number of losses claimed on your home, FEMA will stop insuring it, and then they will suggest your home to be acquired, being bought out. So this is all of sort of future challenges we're going to have to manage. So where these structures are now, what the risk is now, what the risk is in the future, how do we help them stay here? These are all really important things. So the one thing, and it's not a guaranteed 100% solution. But one of the things that we have going for us are these 2 Army Corps of Engineers studies that will help mitigate risk to these 3 or these structures here on the peninsula, no doubt about it. So that is a future thing we're trying to acquire, but it's going to take time. In the meantime, it could rain heavily tomorrow.
Well, I'll just say this. The risk to people from a flooding standpoint is real. What is not real or sustainable is the city's ability to help individuals protect themselves. And I think when we go down the road of what the city can do, what government can do, what this can do, it places a burden on the city. And of course, the mayor is here and he can address that, on his side. But is it realistic to think that we can help people buy insurance to maintain their homes? No, it's not. We have to find other solutions that are sustainable. On the preservation side, most of the people in the city who own their homes are in vulnerable situations. They just cannot afford it. They're old. They've had their houses. They're on Social Security. We are not set up as a society to help people upkeep their own personal property, whether it's a car, a house. I mean, if we have a different society and a different government set up, then we can shovel them through those things. I mean, it's a good point to make, but it's also a point to make that that's not where we're going to be going. We can look at the data and we can look at what can be done. But if we're reporting this from a city point of view and in terms of innovations, we have to look at what the city is doing from what the city can do in terms of where we're building houses, where we acquiring land, what are we doing with our storm waters? What are we doing with our new construction? Those are things that a city can handle. When we talk about homeowners coming to us for rehab and they don't have homeowners insurance, can the city buy the insurance? No, we can't. So it's not a realistic thing to say, because then it puts us in the position of being looked at as not doing our jobs. We help as much as we can. We have organizations that may be able to help, but there's no organization that can actually help people purchase insurance. And some people, they just don't carry it because until they come to us and to get services, that's when they absolutely have to get insurance. So they get the insurance. Once the work is done, they cancel the insurance. So we have to look at what's realistic, what the city can do, and how we can meet our goals without seeming to be have no compassion. But I mean, compassion and reality sometimes don't go together. But I would say from our point in our department, I think we have a good handle on the risk. And if you don't mind, I'll just say what we do for land acquisition as I'm talking about this. And I'm just going to read this and then make another point. Now, the City Department of Housing and Community Development, and that is in when we do land acquisition in terms of flooding, we ensure that the properties acquired are reviewed comprehensively prior to contract execution. The review includes reviewing flood status, floodplain maps, and what is occurring at surrounding properties. Consultation also occur with stormwater and the Office of Resiliency. Additionally, when federal funds are utilized towards the acquisition of a parcel, an environmental review process is initiated. The environmental review process, which engages more than 20 organizations in the state of South Carolina and the United States, evaluates the purpose of the acquisition and the impact on the environment. Now, from an acquisition standpoint, this is where we determine before we buy the property, what the city can and cannot do. And if we buy this property, how is it going to impact the people we put it in there? So we've recently acquired property in Fenwick, and those went through those, we went through all of the processes before we purchased. We are looking at purchasing Verdier, and we've done the same thing. We've talked to every department about flooding. We've engaged you all just to make sure, hey, if we bought this property, what is the risk? We're going to put homeowners here. What are they looking at? What is the insurance going to be? Can they get insurance? So all of those things, we have that as part of our process for land acquisition, because we are the first keepers of what the city could actually be facing down the road should we acquire that property. Now, we've had some recent requests for us to acquire land in Rosemont, which we didn't because of the flooding, of the high, the dry land. We decided that doesn't make any sense because by the time we did all the mitigation and then put the housing, one is going to be who we're going to sell it to. It wouldn't be affordable to anybody up to 120% of the area median income. And two, would they be able to go to the bank, get a mortgage, get flood insurance, and be able to afford it? So I think we're addressing what we're seeing currently, and we're planning for what's coming in collaboration with your department, with stormwater. We're looking at what the Dutch Dialogue said. So we're not doing this by ourselves in terms of producing affordable housing. We're going through a whole collaborative effort to make sure that when we purchase this property, when we put homeowners here, or when somebody comes to us with a property and say, we're going to build, we're looking at what they're going to build and who they're putting there to see if the city should invest money in this, if it makes sense. So I think we're looking at everything. I know the risk is it's getting worse, but as it gets worse, I think as a city, we're doing exactly what we should be doing. We're having these talks, we're having these conversations, and we're looking forward to see what we could do next.
So I think I heard Matt Fountain try to interject something.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. I just had a couple quick clarification points on some of the, I think, the good topics Dale raised. one, I think Dale mentioned that the flood insurance generally is required for mortgages, but not required otherwise, even though it's a very good idea within the 100-year floodplain. The shaded X, the 500-year floodplain, or 2%, or the 0.2% flood chance, or X zone where you have no floodplain, you're not required to carry flood insurance in those. But as Dale mentioned, that's actually where we see quite a bit of the rainfall-based flooding in the city, because FEMA only maps storm surge flooding in their floodplains for the city. The advantage of that is that flood insurance is very cheap in those areas in comparison to being in the floodplain. So it's, I think from an education outreach perspective for affordable housing, that's one of the best things to encourage people who are not in the floodplain to understand they still have a flood risk that will not likely be covered by their base insurance policy if they have one, and to look at carrying what are generally very inexpensive floodplain policies because they're not in a flood zone. The only other point I wanted to make is FEMA generally won't cancel your insurance for repetitive claims. They are the kind of the insurer of last resort originally, and they've kind of become the dominant insurer in many coastal communities. They will make it more expensive, and they might shift you to like a repetitive loss policy, but they generally can't cancel you just because you are flood prone. They just will make it very, very, very expensive over time for you to carry insurance. That's all I had.
Thanks, Matt. And I think you all probably saw, I brought up a sample of what kind of, it's not exactly what goes into that vulnerability score. So what Eddie showed only showed kind of the, kind of the firm information, but there's other factors that go into kind of determining whether these properties are actually vulnerable. So I did want to point that out, but I appreciate Dale being the skunk in the room and kind of bringing that. Yeah, no, I mean, that's why that's part of getting everybody in the room to talk about these things so that we all can make sure that we are all on the same page and have the same level of knowledge and try to fill the gaps where they exist so that we can do the best job that we can for citizens. So.
And Robert brought up in the Robert brought up in the chat the new MapNet tool, and I think we should definitely make sure that it includes the risk rating 2.0 as that comes out to make sure we've got all of those considerations built into our internal tools as well.
So maybe the way to get everyone to make sure that we get 100% participation in our January workshop or February, we'll have Robert demo some of the new things that are available in MapNet so that everyone can see the latest and greatest and get it firsthand from the genius himself. So
I just had a couple of comments because I had my insurance hat on for a moment.
yeah.
Because with flood insurance, I believe that rainfall doesn't fall under regular flood insurance. It needs to be a rising water policy. I don't know if that's changed, but when I was insurance, it had to be. But I was thinking, certainly we can't absorb the cost of that, but I think with a rehab specifically, one of the things we have them do is work with the Urban League on their finances and stuff, and maybe that's we can partner with them and say maybe this could be a component of your counseling with them and how to budget for this and what they might need, even though they're not and technically in a floodplain. This could happen. And I don't know if rising water is as expensive as the regular flood insurance, but I found that out the hard way. So, yeah, it's a different category, kind of, but even though it does the same kind of damage.
Interesting.
Well, I just want to make one, if I can make one final point on this as well. I think one of the great thing that's happening is that people that are coming in and asking for assistance is that we make sure that they understand that the investment that they put in this property is going to be phenomenal. It's not going down because there's going to be no more land. There is no more. So therefore, if you own land, if you have an ownership in something, whatever you put in it is investment for you and your family down the line. It can be generational. And that's the difference. That's giving them a different framework in terms of how they see what they own and what input and what impact it can have And that's powerful because, for a while, everybody was leaving, just getting out of here while they still can. But now they want to come back home. I don't blame them. I'm done.
Any other questions or comments?
Question, but I can
Yeah.
save them to the end if we want to get through everything.
This is gonna be my last slide, but we go ahead.
It just had to do with, as we're talking about insurance, the community rating system. Which, of course, has to do with the premiums, I guess, and reducing premiums for I guess, anybody that holds flood insurance within this community, in this case, it would be the city of Charleston, Valerie. And, I guess the question is, are we doing everything we can, policy wise to get that CRS rating score? It's low or high, I'm not sure where the score goes, but as best as possible so that we can lower the premiums for everybody, especially, more at risk or, the most that are in need of lower premiums for, help with insurance. And I guess.
So you have to come back to the December meeting when stormwater is on deck, because that's their wheelhouse, that's
Okay.
part of it, yeah.
I was just wondering if there was opportunity there in that, rating system that we could take advantage of at lowering premiums overall. And is there any specifics for, affordable or workforce housing, within the CRS that would help our ratings?
I'll just come back in December. I think it's really important to see in CRS and the city is presently rated as a 6. So that means we get a 20, every flood insurance holder, so you get a 20% discount on the premium. And we trying to get 5 or 4, those are hard things. They require governance changes and policy changes and voting changes. There's just different things that we're trying to get there. That's really important. I'll say this, one of the things that was really not explained well about 2 months ago or 3 months ago, there was an article in the newspaper that said Charleston County was a 1 or 2. Most of the unincorporated parts of Charleston County are not, where it's built on are not low. So that's the challenge. That's why they thought they have a fortuitous or an advantageous sort of way that they're looked at compared to the city, where a lot of the city is in the floodplain. So that's a challenge. But we are 6 and we're trying to get lower, but I think stormwater and floodplain will be able to explain that much better.
Pressure's on Matt Fountain.
Yeah, we could certainly talk about it in the next meeting. I mean, one of the biggest challenges, you start to hit trade-offs of increasing cost of construction and remodeling versus insurance savings. And we had gone through that discussion with a previous iteration of council, and there had very much not been a desire to increase cost of construction that way because of the concerns of affordability. So it's always an interesting discussion, right? Of, do you encourage people to build more affordable new properties, or do you try to reduce insurance costs for existing properties as an affordability option? So it is a question we'll continue to talk about and present options to council each year.
I just wanted to finish off the presentation with one of our new construction projects that we just got finished. The last house is going to be closing next Friday, but this entire semicircle on 67 America Street, which is part of the completion of the Father Grand's Court. On the other side is rental and one side is homeownership. Well, on the homeownership side, none of the houses there are in a flood zone. But this first picture, the second house, just the back side, about 2 feet of that property is on the edge of a flood zone. And they had to get flood insurance, but I counsel all the homeowners there, regardless of whether the house was actually shown to be in a flood zone or not, that, they should, there's something we talk about with our first time home buyers, that they should get it. But it's interesting to see the whole piece of property, just that little portion there was in a flood zone.
Mm.
And the bank required that they get, flood insurance. But even if the banks didn't require for the others, all of them have secured flood insurance.
Amen.
Those are
Amen.
beautiful homes too.
Yeah,
They're
thank
really
you.
stunning.
So I'll just add that I was at a West Ashley meeting a couple of weeks ago when a young lady came up and gave me the biggest hug. And I was wondering what in the world was going on. And she was just coming to thank me because she was one of the new homeowners here. And prior to buying the home, she lived on the other side of Somerville. She and her husband are both chefs. They both work in different restaurants. And she said that the difference in their quality of life is just like almost immeasurable. The not having to do that commute anymore, being able to work, live close to where they work. They now either walk or ride their bike. They work in the Upper King Street area. And I could just tell that this young woman, would be active in the community and the neighborhood and just be a good citizen. And she was so thankful. She was very grateful. It's a good confirmation.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, we're.
Uh,
We're getting kicked
Last
out.
call.
That's all.
All right, any last comments, thoughts, questions from anybody? Don't see anyone unmuting on the Zoom.
Thank you all so much. This was, a great conversation and a really fantastic presentation from you all, and really appreciate it. And we're looking forward to December. We've got stormwater and sustainability, so be a packed schedule. And please come back. We'll have again coffee and snacks again. So appreciate everyone coming, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.